Small towns are supposed to feel safe, quiet streets, neighbors who know each other by name, and nights so still you can hear your own heartbeat. But beneath that peaceful surface, some towns hide secrets that people never talk about. Shadows that move where there shouldn't be shadows, and stories that locals refuse to repeat after sunset. Tonight, we're going deep into 3 true small-town horror stories that prove the scariest things don't always happen in big cities. They happen in places where there is nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, and everyone pretends nothing is wrong. Imagine driving down a single empty road with only one flickering streetlight for miles, or hearing footsteps outside your window when you know all your neighbors are asleep, or feeling watched in a town so tiny you can count the houses on one hand. That quiet, that stillness, it can turn terrifying when something in it feels off. And that's exactly what happened to the people in these stories. Ordinary people in ordinary towns who suddenly found themselves face to face with something they will never forget. As you watch, I want you to really picture yourself in their shoes, standing in the middle of a silent town where every sound echoes, where every stranger feels suspicious, where every dark corner looks deeper than it should. Because by the end of tonight's video, you'll well realize just how quickly a peaceful small town can become the setting for your worst nightmare. So sit back, turn off the lights, and let's begin our descent into the unsettling world of true small town horror. Small towns have a way of hiding things. The friendly smiles, the quiet streets, the cozy porches, it all looks so peaceful until you stay long enough to notice the shadows that don't belong. And sometimes, those shadows stare back. This story comes from a girl who moved to a small rural town, thinking she'd finally found somewhere safe, a place quieter than the chaos of the city. She was wrong. What she found instead was a man who watched her, a man the whole town seemed to avoid, a man no one talked about, a man who never blinked. Her name was Emily, and she was 17 when her mother decided they needed a fresh start. Chicago had worn them down, constant noise, crowds, and her mother's endless bills. So when her mom got an unexpectedly cheap rental in a little Midwestern town called Willow Creek, she took it immediately. Emily didn't mind at first. The place looked like a postcard. Rows of wooden houses, a single diner, kids riding bikes, old folks waving from their porches. It felt safe. For the first week, their new house sat right across from a long, empty dirt field. Beyond it stood a faded 2-story home with peeling paint and a sagging roof. It looked abandoned until Emily saw him for the first time. She was unloading moving boxes when she felt that prickling sensation, like someone's eyes were crawling across her skin. She looked up and saw him standing in the window of the old house, completely still, tall, silhouetted, just watching her. At first, she thought he was curious about the new neighbors, but even from a distance, something felt wrong. He didn't wave, didn't move, he just stood there, staring. Sadly, Emily tried to shake it off. Small towns were full of weirdos. She forced herself to ignore it, but the next morning, he was there again. Same window, same stance, same dead-still posture. And she realized something that made her stomach twist. He was facing directly toward her room. She had done nothing but walk across a room and stretch, yet his eyes, or whatever they were, followed every slight shift of her movement. She closed the curtains quickly and tried to forget him. But forgetting isn't easy when the thing watching you never looks away. A few days later, Emily and her mom went to the local grocery store. While her mom chatted with a cashier, Emily decided to casually mention the man across the field. "Oh," the cashier said, her smile dropping instantly. "You mean him?" Everyone around them suddenly tensed. A woman grabbing cereal paused mid-reach. A man pushing a cart stopped and stared at Emily with a look of concern. "No one lives there," the cashier whispered. Emily blinked. "No, someone does. I've seen him every day." The cashier's face turned pale. "Sweetheart, that house has been empty for almost 15 years. Her mother shot Emily a look, silently telling her to drop it. The air suddenly felt thick. Too heavy. Too quiet. And Emily noticed something strange. The townspeople weren't confused. They were scared. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dark shape in the window. Eventually, around 2 a.m., she got up to get water. She made the mistake of glancing through her curtains. He was there, but not in the window. He was standing outside, in the field, much closer. The moonlight barely lit him, but she could see enough tall, unmoving, and facing her. She stumbled back, heart pounding so violently she felt sick. She ran to her mom's room, shaking her awake and begging her to come look. But when her mother finally dragged herself up and checked the window, there was nothing. "He's gone," her mother said with a sigh. "Honey, you need to stop letting your imagination run wild." Emily didn't sleep the rest of the night. The following day, she tried again to get answers from anyone. She approached a group of older men outside the hardware store. "Excuse me, who lives in the old house across the field?" Their expressions dropped instantly. One of them muttered under his breath, "Not this again." Another whispered, "Should have torn that place down years ago." Emily was confused, angry even. What is wrong with the house? Why is everyone acting weird? Finally, the oldest man spoke. "That place belonged to the Burroughs family. Nice folks, until their son changed." He paused. Boy stopped talking, stopped eating, just stood around staring at people. Wouldn't blink, wouldn't follow orders, wouldn't sleep. The parents took him to doctors, priests, nothing helped. Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. What happened to him? The old man looked her dead in the eyes, disappeared. One night he walked into the woods and never came out. They searched for weeks, found nothing. The parents moved away after that. House has been empty ever since. Emily waited for the part where he told her she was imagining everything. But he didn't. Instead, he said, "If you saw someone in that house, you need to stay away." That night, Emily begged her mother to consider moving again. Her mother, exhausted and stressed, brushed it off as anxiety. She said Emily was struggling with a new environment. She promised things would feel normal soon, but normal never came. 2 nights later, Emily woke up again at 2 a.m., not from thirst, but from tapping, soft, slow, repetitive, coming from her window. Tap, tap. Her breath caught in her throat. She froze. The tapping continued, slow and deliberate, as if whatever was outside knew she was awake. She slowly reached up and pulled the curtain back a single inch. A face stared back at her, not pressed against the glass, but inches away, pale, blank, eyes wide open and unblinking. Emily screamed so loud her mother burst into the room. When they looked again, he was gone. This time her mom believed her, not because she saw anything, but because the fear in Emily's eyes was too real to ignore. They grabbed keys and fled to the car. As they pulled out of the driveway, Emily felt something inside her force her to look toward the field. He was standing in the middle of the road ahead, not moving, not stepping aside, just staring. Her mom slammed the brakes, honking wildly, but the figure didn't flinch, didn't twitch, didn't blink. Her mom backed up the car and took a different route through town. Emily kept her eyes shut the whole way, terrified that if she looked, she'd see him right outside her window again. They spent the night at a motel. The next morning, they returned home with the sheriff. He searched the field, the yard, the house across from them. Nothing. No footprints. No signs of movement. Dust everywhere inside the abandoned house. But Emily knew what she saw. The sheriff never said she was crazy. but the look in his eyes suggested he'd heard similar stories before. Emily and her mother moved out a week later. As they drove away for the last time, Emily looked across the field. The house stood silent, empty, dead. But as the car turned the corner, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Upstairs, in the window, a dark figure stood perfectly still, watching her leave, never blinking. As we descend into tonight's chilling tale, take a moment to prepare yourself. And if you're visiting this channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon. Your support helps us bring you deeper into the shadows and ensures you never miss a single terrifying story again. Now, take a deep breath, because the darkness is waiting. Story 2. Small towns have a strange way of pretending nothing is wrong. People smile harder, gossip softer, and always claim nothing bad ever happens around here. But sometimes, the scariest things aren't the ones hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they're sitting right out in the open, in a house everyone knows, but nobody questions. And that's the exact kind of place Emma found herself in the night everything went wrong. Emma was a 21-year-old college student who worked part-time for the city's small historical society. Her job was usually simple scan old documents, update archives, label dusty boxes from someone's forgotten basement. But on the night of December 12th, she got assigned something different, photographing the Reynolds house, the oldest home in town, for a restoration project. The Reynolds house sat alone at the end of Brookpine Road, right where the streetlights ended and the woods began. Locals called it the house that watches you, but they always said it jokingly, the same way people say, this place is probably haunted, while making sure they never go inside. Kids told each other stories about strange reflections in the windows, or lights that came on even though the power had been disconnected for decades. But none of that mattered to Emma. She wasn't a believer. She cared about her paycheck and finishing her assignment before her exam week started. When she parked in front of the house at 6:45 p.m., the sky was already pitch black. The wind was cutting through the trees in sharp, icy gusts that sounded like whispers scraping against bark. The house itself looked like something pulled from an abandoned horror film, tall, narrow, and sagging just enough to feel like it was breathing. All the windows were dark, except the one in the attic, which reflected her headlights like a glossy black eye. Emma grabbed her camera bag and stepped out onto the frozen gravel. Her boots crunched a little too loudly for her comfort. She tried to shake off the feeling rising in her chest nerves, maybe, or just the cold, but the moment she reached the porch, an unsettling sensation crawled up her spine. She couldn't explain it, but she felt, noticed. Inside, the house was colder than the night outside. The air felt old, heavy, unmoving. Dust floated through her flashlight beam like drifting snowflakes. The interior smelled like wet wood and metal, like the building itself had been left out in the rain for years. She clicked on her camera and started taking pictures. The entryway, the staircase, the old stone fireplace. Everything was fine until she heard the first sound. A soft, deliberate creak from the second floor. She froze. Her pulse jumped immediately. She told herself it was just the house settling, old wood shifting as the temperature dropped. Houses do that, right? She forced herself to keep moving, but now every footstep felt rehearsed, controlled, as if she needed to prove she wasn't scared. When she reached the parlor, she lifted her camera for another shot flash. But the moment the brightness filled the room, she saw something she hadn't expected. A figure, not fully formed. Not human. More like a shadow of someone who had been human standing at the top of the staircase for just 1 second before the darkness swallowed it again. Her breath hitched. Her hands trembled. She swallowed hard, blinked several times, forcing herself to think rationally. You're tired and stressed. And this house is ancient. Shadows play tricks. That's all. She didn't believe her own words. She moved upstairs anyway, because that's what she always did. Push through discomfort, push through fear, push through everything. She filmed each hallway, each bedroom, each peeling wallpapered corner, cluttered with broken furniture and forgotten memories. Then she reached the attic door. It was half open, gently swaying like someone had just slipped through it a moment before. And the cold leaking from that room felt deeper, more unnatural than anything downstairs. Just one picture, she whispered to herself. She nudged the door fully open. The attic was enormous, empty except for a few stacked trunks and old portraits leaning against the far wall. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. Every portrait, about 15 of them, was turned toward the door, positioned to face her, staring. She lifted her camera again, flash, click. But this time, when the light illuminated the room, one detail made her knees go weak. Every portrait contained the same figure she had seen earlier on the stairs. Tall, dark, featureless, a human-shaped void. She stumbled backward, her breath rising in panicked clouds. That was it. She was done. She didn't care about the assignment anymore. She didn't care about the historical society. She needed to leave. She turned and bolted down the attic stairs, but halfway down, another sound froze her blood. This wasn't old wood. This wasn't the house settling. This was footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging footsteps coming from the attic above. Emma's heartbeat thundered in her chest as she sprinted down the hallway. Her flashlight flickered violently, casting jittery shadows along the walls. When she reached the main staircase, she didn't walk. She flew down the steps. She made it to the front door, grabbed the knob. It didn't turn. It was locked. She twisted harder, desperately, her palms sweating despite the cold. The lock wouldn't budge, as if someone had turned it from the inside. A low thud echoed upstairs. Then another. Then a slow, steady rhythm started, like something was walking directly above her, and it was coming down the stairs. She slammed her shoulder into the door, but it held firm. She fumbled through her bag with trembling hands, searching for anything, her phone, her keys, anything, but her mind was spiraling too fast to stay focused. The steps grew louder, closer, heavy enough to make the floorboards vibrate. Then she saw it. The shadow figure was halfway down the staircase. Except now it was different, sharper, more defined. A humanoid outline with long arms and fingers that stretched into points. Its head tilted slightly, as if analyzing her, watching her, choosing what to do next. Emma screamed and rammed her body into the door one more time. This time it burst open with a crack, sending her stumbling onto the porch. She sprinted toward her car without looking back. The freezing air burned her lungs, but she didn't stop not until she was inside her car, locking all doors, starting the engine with trembling hands. Just before she sped off, her headlights illuminated the porch and her heart nearly stopped. The attic light was now on, bright, warm, alive, and the shadow figure stood in the window, watching her leave. The next morning, Emma tried to explain everything to her boss at the Historical Society, but they dismissed her panic with a polite smile and a, "You probably scared yourself. Old houses do that." They asked her to email the photos so they could begin their restoration planning. Her hands shook as she uploaded the files. But when she checked the image previews, her stomach dropped. Every photo of the shadow figure was gone. Every portrait shot was blank. The attic picture showed nothing but dusty trunks and empty walls. The only image that remained different was the first picture she took of the staircase. In the reflection of the banister, nearly invisible unless you zoomed in, was something new. Not the shadow figure. Her. Emma. Except the reflection wasn't matching her real posture in the photo. The reflection was staring directly at her camera, smiling. Smiling. That was the moment she quit the job, blocked the Historical Society's number, and moved out of town within the month. She never spoke to anyone about what happened again. And the Reynolds house? It's still there, still standing, still watching. And some nights, if you drive by slowly and look up toward the attic window, locals say you can still see a warm, glowing light. And a silhouette, smiling. Story 3. Small towns have their own legends-old tales, whispered around bonfires. Childhood dares etched into memory, and places adults pretend don't exist. Lantern Hill was one of those places in the quiet town of Haverbrook. A narrow road that curved up a small rise, lined with dead lamps the town never bothered to fix, all leading to a single house at the end of the hill. It wasn't abandoned. That was the unsettling part. Someone lived there, or something did. And everyone in Haverbrook agreed on one rule: never walk past the second lamp after sunset. Jacob Marin had heard that rule his entire childhood. His grandmother was the strictest about it. Lantern Hill listens, she used to say. And the house remembers. They were the type of old country sayings that sounded poetic but didn't mean anything. At least not until you were old enough to notice the tremor in her voice when she said them. But when Jacob moved back to Haverbrook at 23, after years away at college, those childhood warnings felt more like nostalgic town quirks than anything supernatural. That changed the night the emergency sirens went off. Haverbrook wasn't big enough to have many emergencies. When the sirens sounded, everyone came out of their houses. People in pajamas, holding flashlights, phones, rifles, or all three. Jacob stepped outside, confused, adjusting his jacket in the cold December air. Across the street, his neighbor, old Mr. Dean, stood frozen on his porch, eyes fixed uphill. "You hear it too?" the man whispered. Jacob frowned. "Hear what?" Then he heard it, a slow tapping, echoing from far up Lantern Hill. Not metal, not wood, something softer, wet, dragging, like someone gently knocking on the ground, but with something not human. People gathered, forming small groups, all staring toward the curve of the street where the broken lamps began. One of the lamps flickered, then another. One by one they glowed in a sickly yellow light, all the way up the road toward the hill's peak where the old house stood. No one had power on that street. Those lamps had been dead for over a decade. Someone gasped. "It's happening again." Jacob asked, "What's happening? What does that even mean?" But no one answered. The tapping grew louder, closer, but there was nothing in sight, just the road, the lamps, and the hill swallowed in fog. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Go inside. Do not look at the window facing the hill. Lock all doors." Lantern Hill is awake. His heartbeat stuttered. When he looked up, several neighbors were already backing into their homes, slamming doors, lowering blinds with trembling hands. Only a few remained outside, mainly younger people who'd moved here recently, unaware of the hill's history. Jacob wasn't ready to let fear control him. Seriously? "It's probably some prank," something answered him. Not a person. A voice, whispering from the fog, not loud, not clear, but unmistakably calling his name. Jacob. His stomach dropped so hard he almost doubled over. That voice, it wasn't familiar. It wasn't even fully human. It sounded layered, like multiple people speaking in unison, but out of sync. "Jacob, come home." He stumbled backward, nearly tripping on the curb. Mr. Dean grabbed his arm, squeezing hard. "Boy, get inside right now. The hill knows you're back." "What does that even mean?" Jacob snapped, voice rising. But the old man didn't explain. He just shoved Jacob toward his door. The fog thickened, rolling down the hill like a living thing, hugging the road. The lamps flickered violently, humming with electricity that should not exist. The tapping sound shifted, becoming faster, harder, like something crawling. No, not crawling, scuttling. Jacob slammed his door shut and locked it. He rushed to the window, but forced himself to keep his eyes down. The message told him not to look, yet curiosity clawed at him. He could hear it, the scuttling, the tapping, and the whispering, so many whispers, all calling different names. Some sounded like crying, some like pleading, some like laughter. His phone buzzed again. Do not look. That was enough to make him step back from the window. He locked himself in the living room, heart pounding. Then the scratching began. Something scraping lightly along the outside of his house, slow, deliberate, as if tracing the walls, mapping the rooms. He covered his mouth with trembling hands, trying not to breathe too loudly. The scratching paused beneath the window. Then something tapped on the glass, once, twice, 3 times. He swallowed hard. The tapping grew into a rhythmic pattern, too intentional to be wind or branches. It sounded almost like Morse code, but wrong, disjointed, frantic. His phone buzzed a 3rd time. This time, a picture, a blurry image taken from outside his house, facing the window where he stood moments earlier. But the worst part wasn't the angle. It was the silhouette reflected in the glass. Something tall, distorted, standing inches behind where he had been. Its limbs were wrong, too long, too thin. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle. And its hands, they were pressed against the window in the picture, even though no handprints were there now. Jacob's stomach turned. The scratching stopped. Silence fell over the house, heavy, suffocating silence. Then, "You shouldn't have left us." The voice drifted through the cracks of the door like a breeze, chilling him to the bone. It sounded like his grandmother, perfectly, lovingly, except she had died 3 years ago. He backed away, shaking his head. No, that's not real. You're not real. Let me in, sweetheart." He clamped his hands over his ears, but the voice seeped through anyway. It was inside his head, inside the room, inside the walls. A sudden pounding rattled the front door, heavy, forceful. Again and again, something began pushing against it, the wood bending inward. Jacob sprinted toward the back of the house. He could hear something crawling across the roof now, its limbs moving with unnatural speed. Every window vibrated as the whispers circled him like a storm. Come home, come home, come home. He reached the basement door and yanked it open only to freeze. A figure stood at the bottom of the stairs, not moving, not breathing, just standing there, tall, thin, wrong. Its head slowly rotated upward, bones cracking like twigs. Jacob felt frozen in ice as its face came into view, not monstrous, but human. Too human. Familiar, but distorted. A mixture of faces he recognized and didn't. Old teachers, childhood friends, people long dead. Its mouth stretched grotesquely. "You came back to us." That broke him. He slammed the basement door shut and bolted it with shaking hands. He ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and curled into the corner. The noises continued, scratching, crawling, whispering, tapping. Hours of it, until finally, as dawn approached, quiet returned. The sirens went silent. The lamps shut off. The fog lifted. By the time he stepped outside, the neighbors were emerging, too tired, terrified, shaken, but alive. Lantern Hill stood still and calm, as if nothing had happened. Jacob demanded answers. This time they gave them. The house on Lantern Hill wasn't haunted by one spirit. It was a collector, a place alive in ways no one understood. It mimicked voices, took shapes, whispered desires, and hunted memories. Those who walked past the second lamp after dark were remembered by the hill. And once remembered, the hill called them back, sometimes years later. Jacob, who had lived near Lantern Hill as a child, had been remembered. He left Haverbrook the next morning, driving until the town was a memory in the rear-view mirror. He moved states away, blocked every unknown number. never looked at houses on hills again. But sometimes, late at night, his phone still buzzes. Messages from numbers with no area code. Come home, Jacob. Lantern Hill remembers you, and he knows one thing for sure. One day, it will come looking again. As these 3 small-town nightmares settle in your mind, take a moment and breathe, because the scariest part isn't the shadows, the sounds, or the unexplainable events. It's the truth that every story you heard tonight came from a place so ordinary, so quiet, so familiar, that it could have been your town, your street, or even your home. Small towns are supposed to be safe havens, places where everyone knows your name, and secrets rarely survive. But what we've all learned is that some secrets aren't just hidden. They're buried. And sometimes, the things living beneath the surface aren't meant to be found. Maybe that's why these stories hit so hard. Because they weren't about distant forests, abandoned highways, or cursed landmarks. They were about streets people walk every day, neighbors they wave to, places where trust is automatic until the moment something breaks that illusion forever. Whether it was the thing stalking the back roads, the stranger who didn't belong, or the presence hiding behind walls older than memory, each story came with a reminder. Horror doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it grows quietly, slowly, right where life feels the most peaceful. And that's why small-town horror always feels more personal. It makes you question what you thought you knew. It makes you notice the silence a little differently. It makes you wonder why one house on your block never turns on its lights. Or why you occasionally hear footsteps when nobody's outside. Or why the forest line seems just a little too still. Because maybe, just maybe, the stories you heard tonight weren't unique. Maybe they're warnings. If tonight's tales made your heart race, made you look over your shoulder, or made you rethink the place you call home, then do me one thing before you go. Drop a comment sharing which moment hit you the hardest. It helps others discover these stories, and it lets me know you want more terrifying true encounters just like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Joining our community means you never miss the next nightmarish truth waiting to be told. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the channel. And thank you for sharing your courage by returning week after week. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, small towns may look peaceful from the outside, but every quiet place has shadows. And sometimes, those shadows are watching. Until the next story, good night.